a production of the Right to Life of Central California. And now, here's your host, John Girardi.
What happened?
I'll fix it in post.
All right, well, welcome to Right to Life Radio. As we, happy post-election California primary election time. Always a disappointing time of year for any election season is a disappointing time of year for California pro-lifers.
John, you're telling me that you were shocked or not shocked that Gavin Newsom made the top two?
Really shocking, but it's for California pro-lifers, election time is always a difficult time. So what I'm going to talk about is the wailing and gnashing of teeth that is taking place at various liberal outlets over the likely overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Yes.
And there is no outlet in the country, no journal of opinion, no news outlet. There is no rag in this country more consistently pro-choice than the New England Journal of Medicine. The New England Journal of Medicine, which does not even entertain the possibility that a doctor might not think that abortion is okay. It does not. They don't even entertain the possibility that, for example, outlawing abortion could possibly in some universe be legitimate. All of their op-eds that they publish, all their editorials they publish, it's all 100% coming from pro-choice activists, language and talking points. They're very happy to run, opinion pieces written by Daniel Grossman or Ezekiel Emanuel, super pro-choice people in this nexus between public policy and healthcare. So in the most recent New England Journal of Medicine, and this is from the June 2nd issue of the New England Journal of Medicine, shout out to my mom, Dr. Sharon Girardi, who is an avid reader of the New England Journal of Medicine, I think in no small part to provide me with show material for John Girardi Show and Right to Life Radio, particularly when it comes to abortion issues. So here's a piece from June 2nd. What they're upset about, this is a researcher from the University of Michigan, Dr. Lisa Harris, MD, PhD, who she's from the University of Michigan, so you know right off the bat there's something wrong with her. That's just my football alliance.
Oh, we don't give the whole state of Michigan.
The whole state, yeah. Hail to those mother. All right, anyway. So, from the University of Michigan, she is quite concerned because if Roe v. Wade is overturned, Michigan has a law on their books, a 1931 law criminalizing abortion that will come into effect in Michigan if Roe v. Wade is overturned. This is why, by the way, there's all of this Sturm and Drang happening in Michigan. This is not a Michigan-based show, but I have some friends who live in Michigan, sadly.
Kind of an anti-Michigan-based show.
Oh yeah, if anything. No state has provided me with more crushing football losses than the state of Michigan between various losses Notre Dame had against Michigan State when I was an undergrad and then losses we had against Michigan when I was in law school. So I do indeed despise Michigan. Anyway, but to my friend Rick Hollywood, who lives in Michigan, Michigan is going through all this Sturm and Drang about abortion. Basically, they've got court challenges to try to say that the Michigan Constitution has an implicit right to abortion somewhere hidden within its text, kind of like how the justices in Roe v. Wade somehow magically found a right to abortion hidden in the text of the U.S. Constitution. There's a proposal to explicitly insert legalized abortion within the Michigan Constitution, basically to forestall this reality that if Roe's overturned, Michigan's standing law on the books from 1931 is a law criminalizing abortion. So this researcher from the University of Michigan, she is all upset about what this will mean for medical school training programs for OBGYNs, where in many of these schools they have to at least offer training in how to perform abortions. And in this piece, she's got a couple of howlers, just a couple of really ridiculous assumptions that sort of are embedded within the piece, and I want to read through a few of them. So they are, first of all, she has to talk about, it's so, she's all upset about abortion possibly being outlawed in Michigan, and she talks about, will abortion be permissible in these cases, in certain kinds of cases, including patients with increased risk of death, and she gives kind of a list. It's unclear so Michigan's abortion law would outlaw abortion except for life-saving procedures. She writes, it's unclear what precisely, quote, life-saving means. What does the risk of death have to be, and how imminent must it be? Might abortion be permissible in a patient with a pulmonary hypertension for whom we cite a 30 to 50% chance of dying with ongoing pregnancy, or must it be 100%? When we diagnose a new cancer during pregnancy, some patients decide to end their pregnancy to permit immediate surgery, radiation, or chemotherapy, treatments that can cause significant fetal injury. So we're going to avoid fetal injury by killing the fetus? Okay, that's fine. Will abortion be permissible in those cases, or will patients have to delay treatment after? So she gives this whole list. Then she has to admit, of course, patients facing such risk are the minority of those currently receiving abortion care. Yeah, it's like 1%, and there are plenty of OBs who have testified, in 30 years of being an OBGYN, I've never had a case where a mother needed to have an abortion to save her life. This is such a silly narrative that the pro-choice side runs with. And this is a thing my mom noted. Sometimes when you're dealing with an article written by an MD, PhD, and I don't know about this one particular woman, so she's, as far as I know, just a name on an article. A lot of time with MD, PhDs who work for medical schools, they've never actually taken care of patients. So there are certain lived practical realities that they're
John, look,
missing.
I have studied how to change the oil in a car many times.
Yeah, you've watched several YouTube videos.
I've written many long papers about it.
Yeah.
I've talked about the intersectionality of why oil changes are traditionally a tool of the patriarchy.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
So I don't understand why you would doubt my knowledge and the practical assertions I make regarding oil changes.
Right, exactly. All right. Thank you for demonstrating that, Jonathan. So there are also, she has several other things that are kind of silly. One of the things she talks about is because medication-induced abortion is safe, and this is a dogma. This is not no citation, no anything. This is a given. This is a datum. We have to believe that medication-induced abortion is safe. So the abortion pill, the 2-pill regimen over the course of 48 hours where you take mifepristone, RU-486, which cuts off the baby's food supply, baby dies, and then misoprostol to induce miscarriage. So here's her paragraph about how safe medication-induced abortion is. Healthcare providers, especially in emergency department and primary care settings, will need to become familiar with the normal course of self-managed abortion with medications and its rare complications, by which we mean common complications, especially after the FDA stopped collecting data on many kinds of abortion complications, as well as complications of unsafe methods. Because medication-induced abortion is safe, many patients who seek follow-up care will require only confirmation that their abortion is complete, or outpatient intervention if it's incomplete. This is hiding one of the less than safe / very common complications of medication abortions, which is that very often medication abortions are incomplete, i.e. there is some part of the baby or some part of the apparatus that's involved in keeping the baby alive that was supposed to be expelled that has not been expelled yet. So that's one of the big lies of the pro-choice movement is, medication abortion is safe and quick and effective. And it's like, well, actually, in very many cases, it requires a follow-up intervention to be sure that the medication abortion was complete. And this whole push on the part of the abortion movement to have pill abortions be done entirely at home without any in-clinic supervision, that is such a BS thing, because if you have women start to, quote, self-manage their abortions, they might miss stuff that was left behind inside of them, which can lead to all kinds of bad effects. So it's even like they have to sort of admit, while restating the dogma that, Eurasia has always been at war with Oceania. Oceania has always been at war with Eurasia. While repeating this dogma, they nonetheless reveal the problems with pill abortion. So it's astonishing to me how dyed in the wool into the various pro-choice dogmas this person is. There are other howlers within this piece. For example, requiring labor and delivery units to work over capacity will affect all birthing people, not just those who would have ended their pregnancy.
Tell me you're not serious without telling me you're not serious.
It's amazing how these people who are the supposed champions of women's rights can't even say that women are the ones who... is there any woman who's given birth who felt empowered because it said on the birth certificate, birthing parent 1, birthing parent, non-birthing parent, So anyway, they are... It's astonishing to me the kinds of assumptions that are baked into this. And, this is sort of what's making me so gleefully happy is that, look, I'm not happy about any gaps that could result, and I think we need to work hard as a pro-life community to make sure gaps in care and gaps in coverage and any kind of confusion that might exist between providing an ectopic, treating an ectopic pregnancy versus performing an abortion. Obviously, there can be clear-cut distinctions in place. But there's a point about this that Matthew Walther made, who is a columnist for... who does he write for these days? He writes for the American Conservative and a bunch of other places. He used to write for the Atlantic. Or did he write for the Atlantic? I can't remember. Anyway, he's a frequent commentator on pro-life issues. One of the things he notes is that he's the founder of The Lamp magazine. And one of the things he's noted is people bring up, especially more liberal-leaning alleged pro-lifers, will bring up problems of we can't look at this horrible thing that someone who has an ectopic pregnancy might be subject to criminal law scrutiny if you have, as a country, outlawed abortion. And it's yeah, that's bad, and we should take steps to address it if that is something that's going to happen. But the idea that outweighs thousands of children every single day being murdered, that can outweigh, not to be gruesome about it, but this is a gruesome reality, the tons and tons of dead babies that are being slaughtered every single day in this country. The idea that problems with how we are implementing these laws, these small, which it's not to overlook the individual importance of all the people involved in some of those cases. I don't want anyone to suffer. But we're talking about mass extermination of hundreds of thousands of people every year.
Yes.
We can fix the problems once we stop. Let's stop the mass killing first. And then happy to address all those problems. All right, more from the New England Journal of Medicine, a little bit from Matthew Walther also, who has a beautiful piece about his own experience with abortion, with not being aborted. That's next on Right to Life Radio, right here on Power Talk. Great, recorded. Right to Life Radio, John Girardi and Jonathan Keller here. Okay, Jonathan.
Yes.
So we're continuing to look through, as I've said many, many times, the most pro-choice rag in America. It's not the New York Times. It's not the Washington Post. It's not MSNBC. It is, in fact, the New England Journal of Medicine. And the big piece they have in this most recent edition, the June 2nd edition, written by Lisa Harris from the University of Michigan, Navigating Loss of Abortion Services. A large academic medical center prepares for the overturn of Roe v. Wade. So one of the things... Now, the reason my mom, Dr. Sharon Girardi, provided me with this article was she was sort of interested at the kind of downstream effects that could happen as a result of a state outlawing abortion that maybe some of us have not thought of. So, Jonathan, let's go through this. Here's one of the things she writes in this piece. The implications of an abortion ban as I keep holding my phone in front of the camera and block my face. The implications of an abortion ban extend to additional dimensions of reproductive health care. Absent clear policies permitting it, doctors may hesitate to treat patients with ectopic pregnancy, I think this is silly, inevitable miscarriage, or pre-viability rupture of membranes when fetal cardiac activity remains. Hospital pharmacies, doctors, midwives, and advanced practice clinicians will need to consider whether they'll continue to stock and offer the best evidence-based medication treatment for spontaneous abortion, which is the horrible phrase that's used to describe miscarriage, which doctors should have a clue about and stop saying spontaneous abortion when they mean miscarriage. Anyway, mifepristone and misoprostol. So when someone experiences miscarriage, often mifepristone and misoprostol is used to treat, that the baby has died in the womb, and it's a way to allow the baby to be released. So she's saying, well, our pharmacist is going to get in trouble for prescribing mifepristone and misoprostol for a miscarriage, for treating a miscarriage. To which I would say, well, why would they? If a doctor's examined it, doctor's done an ultrasound at this point, has determined there's no fetal heartbeat or something, then writes a prescription for it, why would that be, I can get high on morphine, but it's not like that. Therefore, every doctor who prescribes morphine is all going to jail as a result. There are
legitimate purposes for these types of drugs.
There are legitimate uses for morphine and illegitimate uses for morphine.
And I would also say, John, as mentioned, I know several women that have had aspiration procedures or dilation and curettage procedures to help them with a miscarriage
or stillborn.
Those procedures are not going to be outlawed, nor should they be outlawed.
No.
Even though those procedures actually can be used to cause the death of a child. They can be used to cause an abortion.
They're the same. It's pretty much the same method for performing an abortion, but this is intended to remove a child from the womb who has already died. So there's no ethical problem with it at all.
Yeah.
So I think this is just a red herring that pro-choicers are throwing out.
And
I don't believe this is actually a serious problem that someone can't suss out the difference between ectopic pregnancy treatment and an abortion, that you can't suss out the difference between mifepristone and misoprostol prescribed for dealing with someone who has had a miscarriage versus mifepristone and misoprostol for an abortion.
Well, and so, John, I will also say on this that this is part of the problem when these types of articles are coming from the New England Journal of Medicine and not just Slate or Jezebel or The Nation,
Soviet Weekly.
Yeah, the reason being
AKA that Huffington Post.
I've seen conservative pro-life people on Twitter who are low-key pro-life. They are conservatives, but they hear things like this and they suddenly panic and freak out and they go, "Oh my gosh, well, what do pro-lifers believe about ectopic pregnancy?" And literally, they've not been part of the pro-life movement. They've never considered these situations seriously.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they hear a respected medical journal making these points, and they go, "Wow, well, maybe I need to reconsider my entire pro-life position based on this very serious criticism."
Yeah. Sort of the. I'm not sure this is precisely Bill Kristol, but sort of the Bill Kristals of the world, in a sense. Now, these aren't the only kind of downstream things. Well, we're running up against. You know what? We'll stretch this segment out a little longer. This isn't the only thing. One of the things it notes, she asks in this piece, infertility care practices may need to halt provision of selective reduction for multifetal pregnancies resulting from superovulation or in vitro fertilization. Without multifetal reduction, loss of the entire pregnancy. So what she's talking about here is the not infrequent practice of what happens in an IVF clinic where you have a woman hyperovulate, you fertilize the ova in vitro on glass using the husband's sperm, or the guy's sperm anyway, somebody's sperm, and you could have as many as 5, 6, 7 babies, all successfully, 5, 6, 7 eggs, all successfully fertilized. So then what do you have to do? Well, you might have, what do you have to do? Excuse me. What winds up happening is selectively reducing the number of fertilized eggs, i.e. aborting 6 of them so you can have 1 baby rather than 7 babies. So she asked, well, what's it going to mean for these infertility care places? To which I say, good.
Yep.
Let's think about that.
Yep.
Let's think about creating human embryos as we wrap up the segment here. Let's think about creating human embryos solely knowing that we are going to create too many so that we can destroy 6 of them. Like,
John, I'm
that
very
should be-
concerned that if pro-lifers are consistent, this could end the cash cow of unrestricted wild west IVF and commercial surrogacy.
Right,
This
I
is
know.
very deeply concerning to me.
Yeah. What a terrible thing that we won't be doing that anymore. All right, when we return, a really interesting piece from Matthew Walther coming up in time for Father's Day regarding abortion and regarding people who maybe could have been aborted. That's next on Right to Life Radio. John Gerard and Jonathan Keller. All right, Jonathan, as we look at the possibility of maybe up to 26 states, I think that some of the estimates, possibly overturning Roe v. Wade, outlawing abortion
Right.
in the event that Roe v. Wade is overturned. States can't overturn Roe v. Wade. And we still don't 100% know when Roe v. Wade will be overturned. We will probably have a Saturday show that will be like 2 days before it is overturned, and we won't even know on that Saturday that Roe v. Wade is 2 days away, and then it'll be the unfortunate reality of, having a Saturday show for when Monday news happens. So
Yes.
now Matthew Walther, writing in The Atlantic, has this piece. He's an essayist. He runs The Lamp, which is a Catholic journal of opinion and thought, and he has this piece published in The Atlantic that I think is worth reading. I was born, he writes, on February 22nd, 1990, the year with the highest incidence of abortion in American history, to 2 unmarried 18-year-old parents. My father had spent much of the previous summer in California and had planned to attend Michigan State University on a partial scholarship. My mother's aspirations were unfixed, but I think equally unremarkable. She told me recently that she drove half an hour to buy the pregnancy test for fear of being recognized at the local pharmacy. Family legend has it that she broke the news to my father at an exurban McDonald's, though she thinks it must have been somewhere more private. This announcement was not well received by my grandparents, who had understood that the couple in question were on the outs. My mother recalls a miserable family vacation during which she was forbidden to mention the pregnancy to her cousins. Later, she would complete her first and only semester of college when she was 7 months pregnant. My father was kicked out of the house. As I've written before, only once during my teenage years did I ever ask my mother whether she had considered having an abortion. Between her sobs, she made clear that it had never been entertained. This is not a pious tract. My parents were not saints. They were ordinary young people who were no longer allowed to be young. My father especially was immature, far less willing to relinquish his childhood than my mother. But even she must have resented the fact that her friends from high school were enjoying newfound adult freedoms without the constraints necessarily imposed by her responsibility for another human being. She would have responsibility without freedom. Thank goodness her parents came around very quickly. Well before I was born, in fact. Until I was 2 years old, my mother and I lived at my maternal grandparents' house. For a time, my father's involvement was intermittent. He was always there for birthdays, including the one I spent in the sleeper unit of a semi-truck bound with him for Worcester, Ohio. Eventually, he and my mother did get married, though, and they would have 4 more children in almost as many years, my sister and 2 brothers, and 1 stillborn girl. Neither I nor my siblings realized that our early childhood was one of grinding poverty. To my mother, who had grown up in the solid union middle class, it must have been obvious. There was a hole in the floor of my father's truck that he explained away as a contrivance for spitting out tobacco juice. For years, my mother drove an ancient Lincoln, dubbed the French Fry Mobile, an allusion either to the car's rusty exterior or to the remains of ancient Happy Meals occasionally visible in the hidden recesses of the leather seats.
John, let me just very quickly, quick interjection, because this is a beautiful article, but when people talk about kids being resilient, I do think this is a great example that so often young people, and even middle-ish aged Gen Z and millennial people. Oh, I couldn't possibly have a child before I'm 30 because I need to have,
Right.
2 vehicles, and we need to have a 4-bedroom house, and we need to have multiple pets, and
Right. And there's this assumption that a certain standard of living is unacceptable,
yes,
and that it's so unacceptable that it's worth the cost of an abortion.
yes,
And it's actually why, one of the interesting things we're seeing as we get more statistics about the profiles of people who have abortions. It's apparent. I would need to look up the exact citation, but it was something to the effect of a higher percentage of middle and upper income people, when they have an unwanted pregnancy, actually wind up aborting than lower income people.
yes.
And I think it's because of the things he's highlighting here are the constraints on freedom,
Mm-hmm.
the economic constraints. Like, these are real things, and we shouldn't sugarcoat them. But it's also a thing, as he'll get to the point at the end of this piece, he's glad that he lived. Like, he is glad to have been alive. Like, to have
Yes.
grown up in poverty
Is still worth
is
it.
still better than the alternative.
And
Yeah.
John, on that note, just very
Yeah,
quickly
yeah.
before you go back,
Yeah.
you might have been seeing this. This has been
Oh,
making
yeah.
the rounds all day today. Ezra Klein, an
Who's
opinion
a columnist for
New York Times.
the New York Times. Okay.
Over the past few years, I've been asked one question more than any other. It comes up at speeches, at dinners, in conversation. It's the most popular query when I open my podcast to suggestions, time and again. It comes in 2 forms. The first, should I have kids given the climate crisis they will face? The second, should I have kids knowing they will contribute to the climate crisis the world faces? And I don't want to be too dismissive from my tone, if you can't tell, but it's either, on the one hand, it's I can't bring kids into the world because they are going to be too impoverished, or I can't bring them into the world because the existential threat they pose to the planet.
Yeah, that somehow they will impoverish the world through depleting its natural resources or something like that. Yeah,
Yes.
and it's such a it's a very I'm an op-ed writer for the New York Times kind of perspective that, hey, maybe this guy is not really talking to John Q. American or
Yes.
really understands what he thinks. Anyway, so Walter
Back to the
continues to
article.
write. To be a 20-something mother of 4 children under the age of 6 required toughness. The amount of public condescension and private, and sometimes not so private, scorn that she mostly refused to put up with is something that I have begun to understand only as an adult. For my part, I was always proud of the fact that my parents were younger than those of my friends, that my mother was beautiful and clever, and my father was strong and proud and very good at Donkey Kong Country, and they knew who Dr. Dre and Kid Rock were. I am now old enough that some of my friends have parents who are advanced in age. Some, indeed, have already buried a mother or a father. For me, the deaths of my parents remains what they were in childhood, a remote prospect like the expiration of the Beatles' copyright or Super Bowl 100. By the time my parents are likely to die, I shall be an old man myself and my children comfortably middle-aged. Then the next section of the piece. Winifred Flosshilde Walther was stillborn 2 years ago, on my 30th birthday. Winnie, as we have always referred to her, was 19 or 20 weeks old. We were all in love with her, especially our 2 older girls, in love with her butterfly kicks and in utero axle jumps, with her face on the midwife's portable ultrasound unit, with her name, which struck us as fitting somehow. For some reason, the movements had ceased, and a week or so earlier, her heartbeat had become undetectable. I remember that day not as a continuous series of events leading up to the eventual delivery, but as a jumbled of apparently meaningless discrete images, some of them almost absurdly banal. Ice cream on a tray, a very small bathtub, something about the death certificate, holding her and being afraid to put on her clothes, afraid that I would destroy her tiny body, and eventually handing her to the midwife. My wife screaming, "Let me have it," along with Kate Bush. Our bed at home. Her suggesting that I leave the house because her mother was there. It is your birthday. Friends, one rather gallantly coming all the way from Detroit, dragging me out for Fury Wilder Part 2. We buried Winnie 4 days later on Ash Wednesday. Her obsequies were performed according to the rite of final commendation for an infant. Once again, my memories are impressionistic. Snow falling on black cassocks. The tableau of mourners, fixed in my mind's eye for some reason, is the impossible image of us gathered around a pillar of flame. The paternoster, and above all, the absence of our other children. I still look occasionally at the pictures we took before we placed Winnie in her cigar box coffin, lined with images of the saints, the little white hat, the dress, the perfect body, the wrinkled brown, curiously sage-like face seeming to hint at the answer to a riddle, the one posed by her existence. I keep them in a hidden folder on my iPhone. In telling these stories, my purpose is not, I trust, opaque. As the country awaits the Supreme Court's ruling in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, I wanted to reflect upon my experience and that of my parents, who divorced in 2007 and are, like most members of my extended family, lapsed Catholics. Neither was especially devout as a teenager, and my mother's was certainly what one would call an unexpected pregnancy. Hence the question that suggests itself effortlessly. Why? I, for one, do not regret the brute fact of my existence. And I have every reason to think that if I had been stillborn, my parents would not have celebrated the chance at freedom. They would, I believe, have mourned, just as my wife and I did for Winnie, who at the time of her death could have been legally aborted in all 50 states. The story of my birth is not unique, nor is it hopeless. I pray that soon there will be many more like it.
Oh, great piece.
It is, yeah. And that's the cold, harsh reality of what we're dealing with in so many abortions. As much as, not to call it a red herring, because these are things that do happen, but when people say, well, we need abortion to be legal because of instances of rape and incest and for medical emergencies and women's life, all of those kinds of abortions, and I'm not justifying all of them. I'm not justifying rape or incest-based abortions. All of those abortions combined don't even amount to 5%. It's probably more like 1 or 2% of abortions. The overwhelming majority of abortions are people who, to varying, and in some degrees legitimately and to other degrees illegitimately, feel like they don't have a choice because of economic pressure and because they might have to face the kind of life that Matthew Walther's parents faced, of being poor. And I think it emphasizes two things for us. One, that life, even a life in poverty, has dignity and worth and value. But two, the profound obligation it puts on all of us in the pro-life community to help support people in a situation like Matthew's mom. So it was a beautiful piece, and I'm not friends with Matthew, but I'm friends with some of his friends, and just thought it was really beautiful and really worth sharing with our Right to Life audience. When we return, we'll talk a little bit. Jonathan will give his perspective as a Protestant about Bishop Brennan and his comments on Nancy Pelosi. Next,
Oh, yes.
On Right to Life Radio. Thank you all so much for listening. If you want to learn more about Right to Life of Central California, if you like the show, go to rtlcc.org. Click that red donate button. Also, for those of you listening to this, on June 22nd, we are going to Sacramento for the California March for Life. We've got a bus. We're all ready to rock and roll. So if you want to come with us at Right to Life, please get in touch with us. You can email us to reserve your seat on the bus. Just write in all caps in the subject line, bus reservation. Email us at info@rtlcc.org, or you can give us a call at 559-229-2229. That's 559-229-BABY.
Come to the Capitol.
Come to the Capitol.
It'll be worth it.
Yeah,
Trust me.
Jonathan will be there. California Family Council is one of the the chief, along with the National March for Life.
We are co-hosting.
They are co-hosts of the California March for Life. It's a great event. Really encourage you all to go.
We've got let me just say, John, quickly, point of personal privilege.
Toot your horn.
It is going to be a dynamic speaker lineup.
Who you got?
Lila Rose will
my
be
gosh.
speaking.
Wow.
We will have David B. Wright,
Cool.
co-founder of 40 Days for Life. Yours truly, I'm going to be the master of ceremonies. We will have, I believe, State Senator Katrina Jackson from the great state of Louisiana.
Oh, cool. She was the one who authored their heartbeat bill, I believe.
Yes. She's also, we also are going to have her joined by, I believe, David DeWiden.
Oh, wonderful.
We're going to have pastors, a priest. We're going to have so many wonderful people coming, and I am very excited just that it is an opportunity for all of us California pro-lifers. John, we mentioned earlier in one of the segments how frustrating election time can be.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
This is a chance for you to get all of that frustration out and come
up.
and make your voice heard, stand up.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right. So RTL, give us a call at Right to Life, 559-229-2229, or email us info@rtlcc.org. If you want to reserve a spot on our bus, we'll probably leave Fresno at about 6:30 in the morning, and we'll come back probably around 6 or 7 in the evening. So it'll be an all-day affair, Wednesday, June 22nd, going to Sacramento. All right, Jonathan, just real quickly as we wrap up the show. Bishop Joseph Brennan of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Fresno issued a letter, an open letter, supporting Archbishop Cordileone for his action of denying Holy Communion to Nancy Pelosi. Archbishop Cordileone did this because of Nancy Pelosi's repeated, insistent support for legal abortion. And it made me want to ask, this is not a Catholic show per se, it's a very ecumenical show. I'm on one side of the street, you're on the other side of the street. I want to hear what you thought about the whole thing and what you've thought about this whole Cordileone thing.
Well, let me tell you. I am very grateful, even though I am not a Catholic member of the Diocese of Fresno.
No.
I greatly respect Bishop Brennan and his efforts on so many issues, especially obviously the pro-life issue, and the charitableness that so many bishops have offered towards Nancy Pelosi for such a long time.
Right.
I was trying to even remember, John, when Archbishop Cordileone became the new Archbishop of San Francisco.
It was probably like 10 years ago.
Yeah, it wasn't like he has just been there for a couple of months or a couple of weeks. I'm just looking real quick here. Let's see. Oh, yes. Okay. On July 27th, 2012, he was named as the Archbishop of San Francisco, Archbishop of the Archdiocese of San Francisco. So he has been there for almost 20 years. And this is why I think it is just impressive that he honestly has waited for this long.
Right.
A lot of people are, I'm seeing on Twitter and online, people are getting very upset and very, why aren't you withholding communion from this person or that person?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that it's
clear this was not something he really wanted to do. Yeah.
I mean, and he waited for a full decade. If you think of almost any other cases, the fact that he has basically been pushed into this position by Nancy Pelosi's stubborn and insistent refusal, John, it's not just, again, I'm saying this as a Protestant here, but it's not just that Nancy Pelosi kind of tacitly supports abortion.
Yeah, she's publicly, aggressively pushing legislation to codify Roe v. Wade into federal law, and then some.
And not just that, but the thing that blew me away, I can't remember if I shared this with you. It was someone had posted it online. It was so helpful. The collection of video clips where not only is she endorsing expanding Roe v. Wade and forcing people to pay for abortion and forcing doctors to participate in abortion, she is justifying it explicitly with the phrase, as a faithful Catholic.
Right. So it's kind of a joint thing as we wrap up the show here of not just support for abortion, but sort of causing this scandal of presenting herself as a faithful Catholic while not really doing so. So anyway, while we are a non-sectarian organization, Jonathan and I say...
Here's our ecumenical statement.
Our ecumenical statement on this is attaboy Bishop Brennan and attaboy Archbishop Cordileone. That'll do it for Right to Life Radio. We will see you next week on Power Talk.